Hi, everybody. My name is Charlie McCready, and I am a coach for alienated parents. And I'm delighted that we have Ashlyn here today. I personally find Ashlyn very inspirational. She's a very brave young lady. She was alienated as a young child, right the way through into her young adulthood, and she has very kindly come along and offered to share her experiences with us so that you as parents can learn from it and ideally have better outcomes for your children.
I know that my mother comes from a very abusive home, very mentally traumatized person. And my dad had enough. He wanted to take care of me. So he went to the family court system to fight for full custody of me. My mom had the favor of the family court system. And my mom also has the persona of being very upbeat, friendly, but underneath that kind of mask is a very traumatized, got a lot of problems underneath. My dad tried to eventually go for shared custody, but my mom didn't want to make it work. She wanted me herself. So he decided to let me go to my mom, even though he didn't want that. My dad knew that if he did have shared custody, my mom was going to make things worse for me. Before the divorce was final with my dad, she was already preparing me to have a different dad. Always told by people who wanted to believe my mom's side of the story, whatever she told them, that he didn't want you, he didn't come to your first birthday. Yeah, just a constant narrative. And I didn't have photos in my photo album. My mom kept gifts that my dad tried to send me. So I didn't know that he had cared. My mom had told me that my dad didn't want a daughter, that he left. And that was the constant narrative I was told. Well, my mom pretty much drilled in a lot of hatred in me. So I didn't want anything to do with connection to my dad. It was I was already being turned into this kind of weapon. It took a very long time for me to start to question or even feel comfortable to start thinking about my past, because it's like a can of worms. It's there's probably something there, but you don't want to open it because it hurt. The thing that changed for me was seeing my mom as she truly is. Yeah, so I started noticing that her behavior was very manipulative. She would lie a lot. As I got older and older, it became more and more clear. It was just everything in the house was controlled by her. I was terrified of my mom. Yeah, I was very afraid of her because any little thing I did, there would be a punishment. And it was her empathy wasn't there.
And what sorts of things would she do to punish you?
So when I was a teenager, my mom drove up to a homeless shelter and grabbed my arm and tried to yank me out of the van. And that was when I realized I was very afraid of my mom. Yeah. And then that's when I learned that oh, she was going to do that. I had to beg her to stay in the car and stay home. I went to a camp for 2 years and I did this leadership program. It was amazing. And I came back and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was really trying to figure out if I should go to school, if I should work, and I wasn't looking fast enough. My mom got me to pack up my stuff, and then she just dropped me off at the side of the road at a shelter. And then that's when I realized that she would really do that to me. And it was scary because I was trying to make her happy. I was trying to figure out who I was and what I should do with my life. I was very young. Still, I was probably only 21, 22, so a little bit older, but I was scared. And I wanted my mom to be there for me. If I did anything to upset her, she would just be threatening me with you won't have a bed to sleep tonight.
And do you think that's still affecting you today? Because that was a trauma for you, or a traumatic experience. Does that still kind of permeate into you, how you think, how you feel, how you act?
It definitely does, because I became a people pleaser because there were a lot of good times, but there was a lot of times when her emotions were very volatile. I had to please her for my own survival. Well, my mom wanted to get more custody of children, and I just knew it was a bad idea because I knew how toxic and broken my family already was. And I wanted them to get counseling. I wanted them to stop and just focus on the family. I had told my mom, I don't think this is a good idea. And she's like, wow, you're being so selfish. I'm going to send you out to the shelter again. So I just kept my mouth shut because I had no choice in the matter at the time.
So was she fostering or adopting other children?
Yeah, she was a foster parent for 10 years, and we had about 50 children come live with us. And then she now has custody of 3 kids. But I noticed a reoccurring pattern where it's she wants to disengage the biological families of the kids.
Just going to ask you whether or not she was essentially kind of alienating the parents of the kids that she's fostering or adopting.
It's really sad because my mom, like, I don't understand my mom's behavior, like, at all. Like, at one point, I see her as very kind and empathetic, but then the other part, I see her as apathetic, very apathetic. And it's like, how can you do that? How can you disengage the biological mother of this child who the kids still wanted to have connections with? And how can you do these things? Like, it just was really confusing, her behavior, but it like, I was like, she wants to have these babies because it's like a sense of control and that they need her or something.
That makes a lot of sense, because what you've described, she had her own trauma when she was young, and she brought that with her into her adult life, and then was not really able to be a mother herself in the normal way.
Yeah.
And relied upon these controlling techniques in order to do exactly the same thing as you were describing. She didn't want to revisit her trauma in the same way you didn't want to visit your trauma. Nobody wants to open these can of worms. So how did you kind of realize then that you started to talk about the fact that you became more aware of the environment that you were in and what she was actually doing? And was there a point in time you suddenly realized, oh gosh, she's doing this to me as well?
So my mom had told everybody, like, everybody that asked, oh yeah, Ashlyn's father abandoned her because she's a girl. So, like, everybody believed my mom's story. A lot of people did. And so, but then that day she told me about how she wanted me for herself. I was, what does that mean? My mom had told me that nothing had happened at home after I had called the social worker. And I was getting very tired of my mom and very frustrated because I'm like, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Like what is happening? So I prayed and I asked that God would give me a message, like a dream, because it's the way that God speaks to me. And so I saw my childhood bedroom, and it was white. And I was sitting in my bed, but then there was all these snakes coming from everywhere. They were all pretty, which was weird, but they were like trying to kill me. They were trying to hurt me. And one of them bit me really bad, where I was bleeding from my hip. And I didn't understand that one. And so, but I kept thinking about it. But I knew that there was a lot of deception, and my dream was telling me that. So at that point, I knew my mom's behavior was wild, and I had a little bit of curiosity. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna reach out to my dad. So I did, and I coordinated in between my birthday and my graduation because I wanted to feel like he owes me something, which is horrible. But like, I wanted him to, like, because I was kind of in survival mode at that point, because now I felt like I didn't have a mom, that my mom abandoned me, and that I felt like I'm on my own. And now I just graduated university and I'm moving out of dorm. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm scared. So I reached out to him. He showed me the court documents, and for the first time, I saw the lie that was right in front of my face.
How did that feel for you, seeing kind of the evidence and hearing a completely different version of the story from your dad's side?
It was shocking because, like, I didn't expect that. I didn't know, like, that was there. And it's like, it was very well shoveled in the backyard kind of thing, like, where they didn't want me to find out. And then I was in shock. Like, I couldn't process my emotions because I was still grieving my mom. I was hurt. I was angry. I was graduating. I was overwhelmed. And then now to find out that for 26 years it was a lie. So I messaged my mom and I texted her and I said, when were you going to tell me that, my dad, he fought for full custody? She's like, you need to call me. Like, she kept saying that by text. So I picked up the phone and she was screaming at me, like, violently. She's like, your father never wanted you. Your father didn't want a girl. He wanted nothing to do with you. I was there for you. And so, like, I was at that point, like, my body froze because I couldn't feel anything anymore, because I was so hurt and so, like, in pain, because I just wanted the truth from her. I didn't scream or anything. I was the calm one, which I think is wild. And I said to her, I don't believe you anymore. And that was like a big thing for me to say.
How did she react?
She screamed. She wouldn't stop screaming. And then I hung up on her because she was just screaming, and it wasn't, like, it was very volatile, and I had enough. And I was like, I don't have to listen to this anymore. So I hung up, and she tried to call me back, so I blocked her. Right after that, my dad that raised me tried to call me too, to also scream at me, I'm sure. And I was like, I don't need to listen to this. And I had the realization that it's not okay what happened to me. For the first time, I realized I don't have to sit and listen to my parents treating me like this, which was a big thing for me. So I also didn't pick up the phone, and I blocked him. And for the first time, I started listening to my biological side of the family, which was a story that's a part of who I am that was not given to me. So I need to listen to them.
How did the relationship with your mum develop from there?
My mom became very violent at home, like physically violent. At that point, I already felt like such a brokenness in my relationship with her where I couldn't feel anything towards her as my mom anymore. You think of a mother-daughter relationship as like someone who supports you and wants to do better or be there for you, but I never got that feeling. Like I just wanted respect. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happened that day. Like she told me never to talk to her again. I'm done as her daughter.
So she wanted to emotionally reject you.
Yeah.
I guess that's what you've been afraid of since you were a kid.
And so I saw that as like abandonment, like that my mom is abandoning me. And that really hurt me to the core of who I was, because even though my relationship with my mom was painful, I always tried to have a relationship with her, even though she would keep hurting me with her words, even though she would destroy my stuff or drop me off at the side of the road. I would always try to make a relationship work with her. When I had messaged her, because like I wasn't talking to her anymore, but I still had her on social media or whatever, and I would occasionally call her. And the day that I confronted her about my dad, I realized there's no way I can have a relationship with her.
And when you said there's no way you could have a relationship, is that primarily just because she wasn't prepared to tell you what had gone on?
That, but also the fact that she thinks it's okay to do that to me and also hurt me continually after all I wanted was the truth, because she turned people against me.
So she then started turning people against you because you'd crossed her.
Yeah.
And doing what she was doing to your dad, the person that was no longer aligned with her became, public enemy.
Yeah. I didn't have her on Facebook at that point, but my friend sent me a message and showed me the post that my mom made about me, and so many people were commenting on it, and it broke my heart because I was reading these comments and it was like, oh, she's being so selfish, she needs to just forgive you. And it's not a thing of forgiveness for me, because I do understand that my mom is a very broken person and I have compassion for her. But what I'm saying is that I deserve to be treated better, and that what happened to me isn't okay. And yet people judged me for that and calling my mom a saint. And then I'm getting angry messages from my own aunt on my dad that raised me side and saying, oh, you don't even want me to tell you what I think of you. And it just started hurting me because my mom's side of the family is all like psycho, like they were definitely criminals. So I had lost all of them. And now I'm losing all of my adopted side of the family too.
So are you now being alienated from the dad who brought you up?
Yeah.
Is your mum alienating you from that side of the family, or is that
my mom. Okay. So, but my mom, whatever my mom says or does or feel, he says or does or feel. It's like he's not his separate person. It was really hard because I had such a high respect for that side of the family to judge me like that and also assume the worst of me. And I told my aunt, and it took a lot out of me because she messaged me that and it was so hateful and hurtful. And my mom even said that my aunt was going to slap me if she saw me. What? Like, why would she wish cruelty on me? Like, that's horrible. And I just couldn't process all of that, like it was really hard.
Did you kind of think to yourself at any time, wow, this is what my mum did to my dad?
Yeah.
She's now doing it to me because, for whatever reason, you had a falling out with her, your dad would have had a falling out with her at some point in time. And when you tried to exit away from or give yourself some more distance from that relationship, then she just turns on you as well and then tells everybody else that you're the bad person. Everything that you've done wrong.
Yeah. Like I had this realization. My dad told me what he experienced with my mom, and I was like, I've experienced a similar thing. Like my dad became very emotionally like like really hurt because of my mom. And that's what happened to me actually. I was going through a lot, like with my mom, with my siblings, trying to help them, trying to feel like I'm doing the right thing, trying to graduate university. I was working at a treatment center on the weekend. I was working with criminals in the probation services as my university placement. And I was working another job taking care of all the girls on my university dorm floor. Meanwhile, dealing with my mom, dealing with all my mom's side of the family, and finding out about my dad. And it was, I ended up going, like becoming very in a dark headspace because like I couldn't keep up with my life anymore. And I was supposed to graduate. I had this deadline, but then I couldn't function in my placement. I actually almost didn't graduate because I was depressed and kind of a little bit suicidal.
I mean, completely understandable, because having been through that, you know, that must have had a massive impact on you.
Yeah, because like I was trying my hardest everywhere I was, and I was getting beaten down by my mom constantly. So I was just trying to stay afloat. And so at one point, I realized I was so mentally sick that I went and put myself on anxiety medication because I struggle with anxiety. But also, I went to the crisis response center where it's like, I don't know if they have this other parts of the world, but it's like a mental health facility where you can go and you either be admitted or you can admit yourself. So I went there and I saw a crisis worker because I couldn't cope anymore.
Yeah.
And so I stayed there overnight at this like place, and they set me up with like resources and counseling and like stuff like that to try to help me. It had played a big role on like how I felt even my last year graduating.
You've done incredibly well to have dealt with all of these things and tried to live a normal life. It must have had a huge impact on you. When you decided to reach out to your dad, how did he respond to you seeking to have contact with him again?